Hello, good day to all of our viewers who have tuned in from around the world. On behalf of Plaksha University, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this Tech Talk. My name is B.L. Ramakrishna. I joined the Plaksha team as the Chief Academic Advisor after serving for the last 3 years as the inaugural Director of the Grand Challenges Program at the U.S. National Academy of Engineering in Washington, D.C. Plaksha University is an initiative of 80 tech leaders and entrepreneurs to set up a university to reimagine technology education and research. The university campus is coming up in Chandigarh, India, and will open in fall of 2021. Our primary goal is to promote the wise application of technology to solve some of the biggest challenges facing our society this century. With Plaksha Talks, our mission is to get eminent speakers and experts from around the world to inform us and inspire us to reimagine what a university could be in order to truly serve society. Today, we are delighted to have Megan Smith with us. Megan is an award-winning entrepreneur, engineer, and tech evangelist. She is the CEO and co-founder of Shift7, a company working collaboratively to solve systemic, social, environmental, and economic problems. She is focused on scaling promising solutions and engaging solution makers across the globe to collectively drive societal impact. She served as the third US Chief Technology Officer from 2014 to 2017, helping President Obama and his team harness the power of data, AI, innovation to address pressing issues such as inclusive economic growth and societal justice. Prior to serving in government, she was the vice president at Google for 11 years, where she led the acquisitions of Google Earth, Google Maps, and Picasa, which we all love. Thank you, Megan, for getting it done. She championed increased engineering content at google.org by adding Google Crisis Response, Google for Nonprofits, Earth Outreach Engine, etc. She was also the VP of Google X, where her team co-created Solve for X and Women Tech Makers. Earlier, Megan served as the CEO of Planet Out, an online LGBTQ community and media company in the early days of the internet, worked on smartphone technologies at General Magic and also at Apple Japan. Megan received her bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from MIT, where she now serves on the MIT board as a life member. She was elected to the US National Academy of Engineering and selected as a World Economic Forum technology pioneer. Megan serves on several boards, including Vital Voices, and co-founded the Malala Fund. During her talk, Megan will be speaking for about 25 to 30 minutes, and this will be followed by an interactive Q&A session. I'm excited to announce our two moderators for today. Anuranjita Kumar, who is currently the chairperson at Women in Technology India chapter. Prior to that, she was the managing director of human resources at Royal Bank of Scotland International, as well as Citibank South Asia. Anuranjita has been recognized as amongst the most powerful women leaders by Fortune magazine in 2013. She's also a co-founder of Plaksha University. Natasha Goel is on the program team at Plaksha, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of interesting questions that you would love to ask Megan. Please use the Q&A feature and not the chat feature to enter your questions as you think of them. The moderators will try and get to as many questions as possible given the time frame. It's now my pleasure to welcome Megan to the podium. Thank you, Megan, for being with us. And now over to you, Megan.
Hello, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to know about Plaksha and what you guys have achieved and this extended community of everybody, in re-envisioning engineering education in a wise way. That's a really profound mission. We talk about smart cities. I always think wise communities. Let's have all of that. And to think about how to do engineering in a way that really speaks to what engineering and science and technology are really about, which is service and curiosity and teamwork and collaboration. And many people get through stereotypes and other things get dismissed or discouraged from the field. But, really mathematics is the language of our universe, of our world. And so combining the arts, sciences, technologies, social sciences is wonderful, and re-envisioning that now, especially that we have the internet and we're networked as humanity in a way that we can share and help each other and learn in an apprentice journey mastery model is a really exciting time. What I wanted to do today is, I really think we have 7 billion plus colleagues on the planet. We are linked, not ranked, as Gloria Steinem says. And if we really bring the talent forward of all of our fellow citizens of the world, we can really achieve extraordinary things for a thriving experience for everybody, inclusive, and a much healthier experience for all of the ecosystems on the earth with our living planet. So I have some slides, and I'm going to run through them very quickly to share almost like a tour of what's already existing for us that's out there. So while I'm doing that, I'm also would love to encourage everybody on the call, use the chat feature to share who you are, where you are, and what you're working on, because it's in the collective genius of all of us that we can do many things together. And so knowing who's together today would be wonderful to see. So I'm bringing up some slides, and I hoping everyone can see this, but this idea of unlocking the collective genius of our community, all of us, to transform what we're capable of, especially systems that are so bureaucratic around us. And the picture in the background, the idea for our Shift 7 team, and really what I've worked on very much in my career, what I learned as a young person from my family. I grew up in Western New York, in Buffalo, New York, near Niagara Falls. It's an exciting place because, this is a lot of history. Of course, the history of the Native American communities and the Haudenosaunee Iroquois. Many people don't know about the community, but this is the basis that's very much part of the US Constitution, federated Iroquois communities, the Haudenosaunee. And then, of course, Niagara Falls, from a technology perspective, Nikola Tesla used Niagara Falls to generate power to demonstrate AC and lit our city, Buffalo. We had the Erie Canal. We had, many civil rights and women's rights near us at Seneca Falls, and many things there. And so I was lucky to be exposed to collective genius in that place, both through history and through the current community and the wonderful public school systems that I went to. And from a science and technology perspective, in terms of re-envisioning how that could be, we were lucky as high school children that the teachers made science fair or science projects mandatory. So it wasn't just a project in a club, but everyone had to learn how to, not just, in English, we learn to read and write, or in any language of the world, read and write. But often in science and technology fields, we just have to absorb the facts at school, but we don't get to express ourselves in discovery and invention and co-creation as young people. And we were lucky to do that. So we learned that all the universe subjects are relevant for us, and that we could be welcome and we could have confidence, and we got to flex our muscles as young people in that. So the story I wanted to start with, and it's quite a profound historic story and a modern story, which is the idea of navigating, mastery navigating from the Polynesian communities. Many people may have seen, there's a fun movie from Disney called Moana. If you have children, you might have seen it many, many times. But there's a team that has actually built these amazing Polynesian voyaging canoes. They've been with us through most of human history as the Polynesians discovered and found ways to do wayfinding using the elements of the earth, the wind, the stars, the flow of what they could observe and be part of, without compasses, without any navigation, without sort of modern GPS, of course, because it's older, but just even without those kinds of navigation technologies, just yourself and the elements and the team and the boat. And so this is the Hokulea. It was built, this work on the left is from the 1970s when people resurrected, and they say a dead reckon to Tahiti and back with no instruments. In the last few years, the Hokulea team sailed around the planet. voyaging around with just this, and several hundred people on the crew of 12 rotated out, and they did this incredible mission. Here's some of the young ones learning some of the mastery of navigating and sharing. I share this story because in the age of artificial intelligence and this idea of technology, really human intelligence and human capacity and the capacity of our ecosystems is still very profound. And how do we think about being in teamwork and lifting an inclusive world, a living planet, as we get into these future technologies, not just one group designing for the other, or a lot of biased things, not using technologies for misinformation or to hurt humanity, but how do we use it to help humanity? And these are some of the pictures from the return of the voyage, including re-envisioning school. On the top corner there, you see young people. They had a grand challenge, and the grand challenge was in Honolulu. The Alawai is the canal where the watershed comes down, and it's quite polluted. And so the young people were asked by the president of the University of Hawaii and the Hokulea Polynesian Voyaging Society team, how would you re-envision this? What would you do for the Alawai? And so they were like Rama, the grand challenges of the National Academy of Engineering and others around the world, X Prize and others. This was that kind of experience for young people. I just wanted to show you, sorry, I'll turn off this sound because it's not relevant, but this is a student project. And I love to see that students, the connectivity of humans, machines, code, and data is becoming so interconnected that young people can make projects like this as part of their schoolwork. This is a picture that reminds me of the power of all of us. Rama, you mentioned that I did the acquisitions of Google Earth maps because of this. In the mapping, we found that the metadata for much of the planet was not included. And so my colleague Lalit made MapMaker, which allowed anyone on the planet to draw, like Wikipedia, themselves on the map. And this is Lahore, Pakistan, the community drawing itself onto the map. So thinking about crowd power and inclusion. With President Obama, we looked at all the frontiers towards the end of administration: personalized medicine, local smart cities, wise communities, national AI frontiers, global, environmental, interplanetary. Today, there's a launch, hopefully if the weather permits, from in the US of the SpaceX team with NASA. So all the opportunities we have. The thing that I wanted to focus with you is not a technology talk, because so many people here are versed in technology, but really an inclusion of everyone in the technical future, in the human future. And focus in on this, a quote from the Dalai Lama, that the anxiety of being unincluded, let's not do that, and let's design for that. This is a United States focus, and as US Chief Technology, I'm going to give some examples that are more American, but we share democracy between our countries and many countries around the world. This is showing that how the Congress was voting. It doesn't matter which group is in power, but how they've become more and more separated in voting together. So we have challenges around becoming more separated and into information silos. This is a quote from President Washington in the first State of the Union for the United States. Interesting that he focuses on support of science and literature and the blending of all knowledge, that knowledge in every country is the surest basis of public happiness. I had the honor to work with Malala as she was founding her next mission after the horrible events in her life. And this idea that all the children, they are all graduating right now, of course, not in school, but hopefully returning. And her point was, so many children will not return to school. She said they are our peers to her fellow graduates, high school and college. And we have to make sure they come too. We need them to have knowledge, and we need the energy that they will bring us. Also wanted to share, since we share democracy, this idea of liberty from the early founding of the United States. President Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson made the first penny impression. And isn't it interesting that on the first penny, it says the parent of science and industry. Somehow liberty and science, technology, industry, and freedom are connected in their minds from 1792. And yet we face great challenges. I encourage you to watch this TED Talk by Cathy O'Neill about the weapons of math destruction. Artificial intelligence is being designed by one group for everyone rather than in an inclusive way. And also the data sets are incredibly biased. One group has all the data about them and everybody else is left out. That's especially true on face recognition with our cameras. This is Joy Buolamwini. I encourage you to join the Algorithmic Justice League that she founded. When she put face recognition, when she was trying to use it, it couldn't see her face. So she added this white mask and suddenly it saw her. So she calls it the pale male data sets. We love all colleagues on the planet, but it's not fair that the bias of certain data sets are so full of some of humanity and not others. And the algorithms are being authored by some of humanity and not others when everybody should be welcome. I also think a little bit about the projections about the global economy. This is a projection about AI and sort of the fourth industrial revolution, which I hope will become more the fourth industrial, civic, nonprofit, philanthropy, inclusive revolution, environmental, social, economic altogether. And why should we be planning for 15 years or 20 years from now to be so biased to certain countries? Africa's not even barely listed here. This is offensive. So let's figure out how to do this together and include everyone. And one of the greatest voices on this is Amy Webb talking about how we might think about including everyone in the AI conversation. I encourage you to pick up her book and read the introduction at least, because there's much there and encouragement for all of us to feel welcome in the conversation. My colleagues at Google made this wonderful map showing search traffic. And in this search traffic, you can see it's by language, so red is English, the kind of greener color is Spanish, and then you see some Portuguese. You can see that like the map of the Earth from space, when it's at night, you can see the light. Where there's humans, they're searching. This is from maybe about 5 years ago, but it's still happening that many people are not included on the conversation. You can see that this is not time of day, that Africa is not highly connected. Of course, this is not, this is data traffic, not mobile traffic and texting. But you can see that Europe has pounding many languages, and nearly a billion people in Africa are left out of the global conversation and bringing their talents forward. We need to work together on these as the highest priorities for making things happen. People might recognize this desert picture. There's two desert places here in this image. The upper one, some people might recognize as Burning Man, which is a celebration of arts and festival in California. It's similar size to the picture below, which is the Zatari refugee camp in northern Jordan on the Syrian border. I bring them together because they're operating very differently. They're the same size. And in one place, the humans there are being helped to flourish together. And in the other place, the people are really suffering after terrible events. And we could actually change the environment here so that the talent of the camp, the talent suffering here, can be lifted to do what they would do. Our systems need to be updated because they inflict pain. And individuals aren't doing that on purpose. It's the systems, and we have to think in a systems way. So my slide riff is really, in my conversation with you, is about what can be the inclusive future of innovation, inclusive future of learning, work, AI, data sets, history, entrepreneurship, community democracy, and our living planet, thinking about these things, everyone at the design table together, nothing without us, nothing about us without us, as a way of design thinking, human-centered design. This is a picture, again, contrasting West Virginia, where this poor man is getting water for his family and the systems are not made so that there's a WeWork makerspace fab lab in the brick building, but sharing that in Chattanooga, where the elder woman is looking at VR, has the highest speed internet for everyone in the Western Hemisphere. That's community organizing that they did there. We have as many in the United States, we have as many open STEM jobs, and here's a hackathon with young people, as we have people in prison. And when we teach STEM and tech in prison, and skills and confidence and work with people, we get 7% recidivism or return to jail. And when we don't do things like that and we don't respect the talent, we get 60 to 70% return to jail. This is terrible for talent wasting, and it's expensive and sad. So I turn to the Sustainable Development Goals, which I know many people on this call are familiar with, the global goals from the UN that we all set together with the governments and civil society. And I want to share that we organized a Solutions Summit at the very first one, and we continued to do it for the last 5 years, where we just put up a web page and ask who's already fixing the Sustainable Development Goals. And what's great is a lot of times we have a bias. If I say innovation, we might look at Silicon Valley. And I love my colleagues in Silicon Valley, but they're not the only ones who are innovating. And so you can see there's teams from all over the world in the pictures. There's a team flying drones to plant 1 billion trees a year. Teams in Burkina Faso working on solar lighting, working on prison innovation for learning. And one of these wonderful ones is a floating fab lab for the Amazon. So this is a makerspace that can be on boats. So the people in the Amazon aren't needing to cut down trees for livelihood, but instead we can move towards innovation and curing cancer and solving local communities with people who really are knowledgeable there. It's a much better vision. So thinking about entrepreneurs in the UN, innovators in the UN of all kinds, this was the past year, and I just wanted to focus in on Bernice, who's in the center on the top. She has the Ghana Bamboo Bicycle Company. They sequester carbon by growing bamboo, and then they're able to basically grow bikes. This is a material that anyone can have in many countries. These are half women manufacturing, beautiful bicycles, special arts, and sometimes using found metal materials as well as new. Young people, like every 10 bikes, one goes to a young person who needs it to get to school. That's happening all around the country. Here we're showing that kind of ecosystem where an innovator like Bernice can have supportive acceleration partners around her, whether they're venture capitalists or nonprofit groups, philanthropy, experts. There's a guy here who helped turn around the bicycle company Schwinn. So he's a great coach in this case. So thinking about all the communities, this is a town in Idaho, Boise, Idaho. There's 15 tech meetups there, one with more than 800. So all around our world, there are innovators. And can we find them? I call it scout and scale. Scout, share, scale. Go find them. Find the talent in Gaza. Here's an internet camp in Gaza. Talent in Afghanistan. These are University of Herat graduates who are founding companies, and help lift up this talent. I love this image of all the tech meetups. This is the Google developer groups all over the world. Many of the neighbors don't know about these, but if you go to the site and click, you can click down and find the leaders and join these conversations, and also help them expand their thinking like you're doing at Plaksha about how so many more people can participate and so many more topics are relevant. Justice and pay equality and ending domestic violence. These are science and tech topics, just like self-driving cars. We can have those innovators come to these meetings. We've been working with MIT, our Shift 7 team, on supporting innovators from the Native American communities. This is the MIT Solve Indigenous Communities Fellowship. Henry Red Cloud, a genius solar innovator. Rose is working on agriculture. People are doing new kinds of community development designs. These are some of the projects from 2018, 2019. We can work on these problems and find, in this case, talented innovators on Indian reservations who deserve the same kind of support as a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. We were working with island partners, GLISPA, HGG, and others, Polynesian Voyaging Society. Think back to the Hokulea canoe I started with, finding innovators and then transforming our policy meetings to not only hear speeches and panels, but also take the tables and accelerate innovators. You can see some web URLs here. And some of our colleagues on the bottom have founded something called Island 2030, which is an innovation network that's been doing video calls, cross-sharing across the islands. I highlight them especially because the islands face so much climate challenge that they have some of the greatest innovation. And on the right here is the Hokulea team itself working with the Ocean Elders to share their wisdom from the trip and engage others. We can use our Zoom and other technologies to connect across the planet. When we were in the White House, we brought together all the leaders from different small cities and large cities in the US and rural to share who was already doing tech innovation and community organizing, both meetups and gatherings, but also great innovations like Rec to Tech, which is a building that's a rec center that now in Baltimore has Tech Center, Mega for the high school kids, Nano for the little kids, adults involved, and everybody learning how to do 3D printing and making and building their confidence. We were able to community organize employers who were hiring from new training, coding boot camps, municipal leaders, and regional teammates to welcome them, so more people could come to the thousands and thousands of open jobs in tech that are around the United States and around the world, and really community organized that. After we left government, we went on a tech jobs tour with others, and we went, here's Cleveland, and speed mentoring with others to welcome them. Here's Oakland and other places. We went all over the country, think like a road rally of inclusion and inviting neighbors to meet each other and help each other, like apprentice journey mastery. You know, it was a wonderful experience of seeing all these innovation spaces that many people in town didn't know about and opening that up. In our history of America, George Washington Carver did that for agriculture innovation and was a great innovator. So we can think about history and how others did this. I'm from Buffalo, so we saw some of the older places like Trico windshield wiper plant, whose closed turn into innovation centers and work on solutions for medical and environmental. This is in Memphis, similar idea, code crew using container ships for STEM boot camps, which they're doing along the Mississippi, and also lifting up innovators of all kinds. This is a grocery store in the Mississippi Delta, which upstairs has a coding boot camp for the students who didn't go to college to join the tech center. This is in Appalachia. It's a tech company called BitSource, drill bit source code, coal miners moving to coding. In Idaho, and a road rally there. And people working together to community organize older spaces to become new again. People redesigning universities like this one to have apprenticeships, and Steve Case working on Rise and Rust. So all these kind of techniques that we use in tech, sprints and upgrades and fellows and communications campaigns from our marketing colleagues and communicators and storytellers and arts and letters teammates and innovators. How do we community organize ourselves for collaboration? I call it TQ, tech quotient for everyone, a tech quotient in the room. And we were able to do that with government. President Obama helped us bring more than 500 Americans who had built Amazon, Facebook, Google, Dropbox, and blend in for civic tech, which is happening around the world. And I know that's happening in India, it's happening everywhere. We even saw young people founding something called the Civic Digital Fellows, who are young people. We were able to engage with other elite knowledgeable colleagues on other subjects on these kinds of topics, redesign websites and analytics sites, work on making forms from government much more responsive, like something you would see from a tech company, open up the data sets with the census team for not just sort of mapping or energy or NASA, but also for housing and education, and open up. There's an app for that, right? There could be ways that we can open the data sets for that. This is Opportunity Score that Redfin did for better resources. This is better access to information about colleges. This is a hack the pay gap that colleagues did. Like, why wouldn't we come up with apps and VR and solutions for the pay gap, which is making us suffer? And then creating an apprentice journey mastery component of a data science cabinet where all the data science colleagues in government could make rubrics and help each other. We did redesigns on the Ebola suits, which is relevant now. How can we make PPE more available to more people that's more comfortable, people having to work shifts? This was done by Crowd Genius and Grand Challenges. The Open Government Partnership included all kinds of tech folks in. We saw this with local communities on hackathons. Foster care, think about health and human services. A lot of time human services are not getting the same kind of tech innovation they could, but we can do hackathons and innovation. This is Grace. She's a 10th grader in high school, and she's teaching the police chief how to code in this picture, because we have data sets like officer-involved shooting, use of force data. We're seeing this in the United States. We need to stop with the bias. So we really gather people to look at data sets and bring a community of practice of police forces that could be opening up and working on collaboration for solving deep systemic bias that we know is heavily in all of the countries, especially in the United States. So what you are doing at Plaksha, I call active STEM. Many people call it that. And how do we have active participatory STEM learning? There's a wonderful movie. I hope you'll watch it. There's a young woman from India in it on the bottom right. This is young people who were solving community problems. She saw pollution in the rivers and this stuff blowing in her school bus, and began to create a data map for measuring and solving. So, we can use storytelling. We can use our television stations to share solution making. Native American communities fighting uranium mines. We have a lot of pollution issues, and people are coming together to do this. I encourage you to consider launching something called the Chief Science Officers. This is an elected child, like a class president or a treasurer or a student council member, but there could be science children. There's already 700 of them across the United States, in Kenya, in Kuwait, and in Mexico. And it would be great to see this all over the world, so students are part of the science conversation and bringing STEM into their schools together with the teachers. We also believe that not just using technology, but being able to create technology is very important, and technology on things you're interested in. So how do we have computer science at all levels? The Muskogee Creek Tribe in Oklahoma, Native American community, teach robotics in Head Start, which is our preschool 3- and 4-year-old programs. This can happen all around the world, inclusive learning. I share the Data Science Federation from Los Angeles, where the city teams post problems that they have, and the faculty from the universities assign them as homework for prototyping to the data science students, which is much more fun for them because they're working on their hometown for their homework. So I'm sharing some of the methodologies we at Shift 7 have been using, which are studio prototyping, working together, ecosystems, so trying to get the networks to match, and getting people who don't know each other working together, scouting and scaling and communities of practice, and then better storytelling of this incredible world that exists. Sometimes I call it the Wakanda MacGyver, the Wakanda, the movie Black Panther, the doers in the world. You can think about Harry Potter, like all these people are doing all this cool stuff. Can we make them more visible and have more people feel welcome and confident to come in? So the last thing I want to talk about is a series of images that have to do with inclusion. This particular one I love. We hosted Science Fair at the White House, and the children of all ages were around the White House with their project, and President Obama would walk to see them. This is a group of young ones from Oklahoma, and President is asking them about their project, which is a page-turning robot. They've learned that you can help others who might have disabilities and challenges using science and technologies. They've learned you can do it in a fun way with your friends, and they've learned you can wear capes and be superheroes while you do it. So the president asked them, what did you guys do? How did you guys do this? And they said, well, we had a brainstorming. And he said, really? And then what did you do? He said, we built some prototypes. So think about if all the children in the world got to do brainstorming and prototyping on challenges around them and be supported by adults, they would be in an apprentice journey mastery way that the Plaksha University team is thinking for the university students and already doing with your first class graduating. This is the kind of world we want. The thing I want to share is this. What do they face, those girls? This is a data set about who gets to be seen on television. I'm showing you this. The bar chart on the bottom is showing in children's television, the men have way more lines than women. And when we grow up, because we were children in that media environment, over here, the blue is men's lines to women's lines in 2,000 popular films. And it gets worse with age. We really need to kind of take a breath on this. We want to hear from men and women. We want to hear from everybody, especially our women of color who have the least voice in our world. What can we do? We worked with the University of Southern California team and the Gina Davis Institute and others on software, and the USC team was working on AI for media bias, and they actually ran Star Wars through this. So you can see the yellow and green is the earlier movies by gender who got to speak, and the blue and the other colors is who got to speak in the 1977 movies by race, and then others. So our hero films need to represent more of us. This is a video of showing face recognition technologies being used on media. This is the film Hidden Figures that the USC team did. And so we can use AI to help ourselves with unconscious bias that we have. This will help us get out of our extremely lopsided and imbalanced world by using the technologies of today for equality and justice, just as much as we might use them for precision medicine, COVID solutions, self-driving cars, or transportation solutions. And I would share this hero from history. When Darwin was working on the origin of humanity and the origin of species, there was another person working, and her name is Ada Lovelace. And she was working on the future of us. And she's the person in the world to write the first algorithm. And really, I really think the inventor of AI and some of our quantum ideas. She said, I think we could think of the math of the cerebrum if we thought about it right. And her quote, she said, just like we have figured out astronomy and those ideas, the direct quote that she said was, I wish to bequeath to the generations a calculus of the nervous system. We have to know about Darwin and Ada. We have to know about all of the innovators and where we source things versus the hidden figures who get left out of history. The next picture is fun, just looking at Ada's hair and someone else we know. You know, Alan Turing here, Joan Clark, they were both part of the code breakers who saved 11 million lives and shortened World War II by 2 years with data code technology. And I wanted to share that these are the code breakers from Bletchley Park in the UK, World War II. The Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, her grandmother and great aunt were code breakers at Bletchley Park. We don't know about the women mathematicians. We know more about the male mathematicians there, but they were part of creating computer science and coding. Grace Hopper, the inventor of coding languages. She always said, don't let them tell you you're wrong if you're not. You know, this is the original Macintosh team. It has a lot more women and men than people are aware of from the movies, but Joanna Hoffman in the top right was Steve Jobs' sparring partner on figuring this out. Susan Kerr on the top of the pyramid on the right is responsible for most of the icons on your phone. She's a graphic designer who did all of the graphics there. We need to know their names. Jane Addams won the Nobel Peace Prize for inventing social work. She was working with colleagues on data. And so we need to think about social work as a very important AI area. Ellen Swallow Richards created the chemistry labs at MIT, first graduate of MIT, worked on water. She created the first sewage treatment plants. These are technology subjects. The science of normal life and our own health. Ida B. Wells. Why am I talking about somebody from more than 100 years ago? Her work on the Red Record really opened Americans' eyes to the lynching and the imbalance and the injustices in America. She just won the Pulitzer Prize last month for this work over 100 years ago, which is data science and journalism. She said the way to right a wrong is shine a light of the truth upon it. She was protesting the Chicago World's Fair with Frederick Douglass, the place where we know of Nikola Tesla and Edison and are so proud of their work, because African-American inventors were not allowed to have an exhibit there. And today, you know, I encourage you to read her other work, The Reason Why, which is full of African-American inventors and sculptors and architects and others who would have been in the fair and we would have seen, and we wouldn't have such an imbalanced tech sector if we had known this history. You know, and then the bottom, Josephine Cochran, who invented the dishwasher, her company blended with KitchenAid. The only homage I have ever seen to her is this Romanian stamp. So this is our tech sector, when it could have included all of us. This is CES last year, and I love all of these people, and there are some other on the planet, and we can include them. And so I encourage you to look in history, because in history we can see the future. We can see that Katherine Johnson calculated the trajectories for Apollo 11 and Alan Shepard. We can know that Margaret Hamilton wrote the code for the Apollo missions. We can know that there were 13 and 7 astronauts, the Mercury 13 women and the Mercury 7. And so it's important to know that privilege, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would teach us, is something you think's not a problem because it doesn't affect you. But thinking about the privilege we have with our science and technology backgrounds, or those with arts backgrounds, or those with language backgrounds, or those with indigenous knowledge backgrounds, or those with social sciences backgrounds, or any of that, and thinking those who have that, can we come together across difference and really push those SDGs over the line? And the way to do it is scout for those who are already doing it and help them, and create apprentice journey mastery type paths, just like you are doing so much at Plaksha, which is so impressive. So I'm going to end there, other than sharing that today with the launch on the upper corner here, there really were 4 women in space together, including 2 women of color. And so we need to see the truth. And then to the right of them, you can see the Wright brothers with their sister, Catherine. Of course, their mother, most people don't know that the inventors of flight, the Wright brothers and sister, had a mother who was a mechanical genius. So I encourage you to look at our series 20 for 2020. It's posted on Amy Poehler Smart Girls from Shift 7 of some of the extraordinary accomplishments by women, especially women of color, that we've shared there. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the Q&A. And again, in the chat, please share who you are and what you're up to. And I know we're going to, in the Q&A box, share more together of questions we might share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. I think, I'm absolutely awestruck and inspired by some beautiful insights that you've shared. And as I was listening to you, one of the very famous quotes of Barack Obama, which I think he made in one of his election speeches, which was around, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And in some ways, I think that's very similar to what Mahatma Gandhi's message to India was, which is the change that we seek. And, one can see how beautifully you've woven innovation, inclusion, and I. And so there are those three I's which have kind of meshed up in a way that one can see how you're bringing aloud the message of innovation and tech from a social impact perspective. So I was just looking at the chats, and I'm going to pick up, some threads from what I can see people really want to hear you about. So one of them is this whole diversity and inclusion debate. And on one side, we've been very progressive on the tech front or innovation front. But however, geopolitically, we yet seem to be in this quandary of debates about what's happening in India, what's happening in the US. And I think the whole COVID situation has compounded it even more. And thank God for technology, we're able to see you and connect with you and have this conversation. But you'd almost feel torn between what's happening geopolitically, and it feels like one is trying to experience the magic of technology when, these innovations come aloud, but then the environment around us is not feeling as conducive to the unison or the inclusion messaging that you're so rightly talking about. So any thoughts about something very topical which is going on in the US where Black Lives Matter, India is suffering from migrant issues, UK is having severe unemployment issues, and yes, tech is a solution, but we're just so overwhelmed with all of this. So any thoughts you would have?
Yeah, lots of thoughts. Thank you so much. And it really, it's in some ways the answers are in the thoughtful way that the Plaksha team is thinking about rethinking engineering education. These are challenges that have been with us, from centuries, and it's time to be done with them. It's time to prioritize solving them. And COVID, it doesn't discriminate. It comes at all of us. But it does discriminate because we have systemic structural bias that we have not prioritized solving. Today with the launch from SpaceX, it's poignant. You bring up Gandhi. We have a wonderful statue just a little bit from our house, and I was lucky. I have two boys. One of them graduated from high school this year, and I'll note when the online graduations came, especially the XQ one, they noted of his particular group, our high school 2020 class, that they're born during the year of 9/11. Either their family was pregnant, the mom was pregnant with them, or they were born just before. This is this group that's already lived a life in a complex world. And then their senior year is really focused on complex world. And there's really a public health crisis. And you might think I mean COVID, but I mean inequality and injustice, unfairness. I mean, isn't it crazy the domestic violence numbers are going up?
Yeah.
Isn't domestic violence equal, or perhaps more important to work on than self-driving cars? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't fault my friends and colleagues who work on self-driving cars. That's fun and interesting. but it's not as hard a problem. It seems hard, it seems magical, but you know, you can work in your lab, you can work on, you guys, you don't need to work on the deep complexity. You don't need to work so hard across disciplines. And for me, I always think about scout and scale it. It's so hard to solve these problems, really hard.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do as a methodology is, like I said, there's 7 billion plus of us. Somebody around here's got something figured out. So can I use our network, our human network, to find those who have something promising? It might be some research that shines a light. There's a guy named Raj Chetty here in the US who has been in our IRS, our taxes database, looking at the data science of inequality and finding things that we wouldn't have known. As Ida said, you know, the way to, you know, shine a light of the truth is what we need to do. It could be that, or it could be somebody who has a solution. But then what often happens is certain people get all the resources. Maybe they don't even have the best solution, or they're even earlier than someone else. I'll give you an example. I'm on the board of Vital Voices. I encourage everyone on this call to get to know Vital Voices. This is a network of 18,000 genius women innovators solving trafficking and economics, and they're all over the world. They're equal to Elon Musk, who I love, and Jeff Bezos. They're equal, but why don't we hear about them? You know, my friend wrote a book called Mother Teresa's CEO. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, we have to have this fourth industrial revolution of the CEOs, but where's the other CEOs? You know, like the EDs and the leaders of all the civics, and why do we think some things are more important, self-driving car versus solving domestic violence? There's a woman named Sandra Mello who's a police leader in Brazil, and she has figured out extraordinary solutions. She's a Vital Voices Innovator awardee for helping the police with training and learning and the media, and really shifting so that justice is served and people are learning not to do this. And it's becoming something at a younger age. So it's a prioritization problem. So I want to come back to Gandhi and the statue. He's holding his walking stick. And I had the honor to be with the King family, Bernice King, Martin Luther King Jr., and Coretta Scott King's daughter, when a young woman from Pakistan won an award, the Coretta Scott King Award, for her work with villages and empowerment in rural areas of Pakistan. And so we got to visit the museum in Atlanta, and Gandhi's walking stick is there. That's where it is.
Nice.
And so we know everything is connected. We know India and America are connected, that all of humanity who's trying to be included, as President Obama says, the arc of justice bends toward freedom. Can we, as science and technology people, include our magical tools in the solving of the harder problems? And can we notice, as I shared, that in history, many people have, even if you never heard of them. I mean, it's incredible that the woman who won the Nobel Prize for social work, Jane Addams, Double D Addams, probably most people on this call never heard of her. And she used data science. So wouldn't data science be well served for public health and these challenges to be a big part of our AI work, you know, and getting the data sets balanced and work on domestic violence and pay equality, all these things, racism, policing, you know, more effectively. And you know, many police officers are wonderful in their certain service, but some need some new training and new thinking, and it's urgent and it's a priority. It's time. Time's up.
Thank you. So well said. And I think as a chairperson of Women in Technology in India, this so echoes with me, because we come across some really senior leader. I mean, I just stumbled on somebody really senior in IBM in India. She has 8 patents to her name, but nobody's heard about her. And so it's fascinating. I mean, the talent is out there, and be it race or gender, and the whole colored women thing really resonated with me, because somewhere in my journey, I've seen what that means and what that can create in terms of a hurdle for you. But just moving on, and I'm conscious there are lots of students who are listening to you, and it's like the matrix screen, the questions are just falling into the chat, and we're finding it difficult to keep a tab of it. But again, reading a few questions, the obvious one, class of 2020, And, you know, you have a lot of people who are aspiring for tech careers here. There is a batch which is passing out this year. I mean, as much as, you know, it's a special batch and it's a special year for these grads. But what's your messaging to them?
It's such an incredible time, a hard time, a complex time. I think the planet has always been complicated. Our lives have always been complicated. The way, you know, humanity is, but also the way the earth works. You know, we have climate change. It's our highest priority in terms of our home, you know, is how do we keep our living planet healthy? And then how do we work on the health issues we have around social, environmental, economic thriving and solving the hardest things. So what I love about your generation is that you are not afraid. My sons yesterday said, "Mom, I'm sorry, but we got to go to the protest." And I'm like, very happy. Your grandparents would be very proud of you. Please go, wear your mask, you know, and they went. So I think that whether it's the Black Lives Matter, all ages, and I'm on the MIT board, there's a wonderful group of young people working on data for Black Lives. Like I said, the data-driven justice, police data initiatives work we did. What I encourage the class of 2020 is listen to Grace Hopper, that quote I mentioned to you. She actually has two quotes. One is ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not really what ships are for. She was such an incredible person. You know, when she thought of the idea of coding languages, many people told her that was a dumb idea. I mean, think about that. And her idea was like, well, I think we could broaden participation in, you know, this new field if we did it in a human language. And so she did all the work. She wrote the first compiler that allowed us to write in a human language and compile it into machine code. You know, people don't know that, but like, think about that. What if Grace didn't do that? You know? And so you've got to have your confidence. And one of the things I often think about is, especially the people at Facebook, who in those meetings probably were saying, I think we should prioritize the tools for anti-bullying. I think we should prioritize the tools for not fake news. I think we should think about this. I have an idea. I have a solution. I have this. I have that. And the others who sat in privilege, again, that quote, often when you're in privilege, you don't even see the problems. You think, oh, someone will fix that later. And then we have our challenges that so many in the Rohingya community and others have faced. The elections across the planet, being biased by bots, you know, and like, what are we doing? And wouldn't that be a higher priority than a little more revenue? So I was on an election commission for the Kofi Annan panel, and we were looking at that. And, you know, it really didn't start with the US elections, and the Brexit elections started in Kenya. So what is the technology for? And the technology can be good or bad. You know, so let's think in your generation, what would you do? And also with things that are wrong, what will you either protest or write about or do arts for or write algorithms for, make discoveries for? Like the young woman who's seeing this crazy foam coming in her school bus from the pollution of people using too much phosphates and all the rivers getting polluted. Like, what are we doing? And she took the action, and she's in your generation. And so you have that. And what I guess I encourage, and you're doing so beautifully, is internet's existed for your whole life. And so you know that we're networked, and you know that you can work together. And I guess I especially encourage those who have a little more voice to listen up and include and support those who have a little less voice, because they're your equals, they're your peers, as Malala said. You know, if young woman is being forced into child marriage, let's get her out of that and get her into school and let her solve cancer with us, right? And not be wasting her time in an unfair, unjust situation. So that's the way I think about it. Nothing about us without us, being in community, hearing your voice, knowing when somebody's saying, well, that's not important. You don't have to listen to them. Why are they in charge? Just because they got a little more resource? The other day I got an email from somebody from a very talented young man at the University of Pennsylvania who wanted to make a company about helping with coding and things. And I thought, okay, I can answer him. Or I could help Deborah, who's in Nigeria, who was in the UN Solutions Summit, who created women texters and is already doing what he wants to do. And I can introduce him for an internship with her. Because of his position, he'll probably get venture capital funding for his idea. Her work might or might not get much funding, and yet she's way ahead of him. So how do I help balance out hearing and seeing this stuff and helping the Deborahs of the world and this young man? Because they're both terrific and they're both in this generation.
Fabulous. I mean, I have a 17-year-old, and once he asked me that, well, I asked him the question, how old do you think internet is? And he was like, must be a century. When I kind of said 25, 30 years, he was shocked. And he was like, how did you study without Google? How is that even possible? So all of you out there, you're a very special generation. You've had much more than your parents did. So please respect them because they studied without Google. But just, you know, one really interesting question has cropped up. Have you heard of jugaad?
Say more about that.
Have you heard of this word called jugaad?
No.
It is a quick word, or well, let's say it's quick innovation in India. So
yeah, sprint, like a sprint.
Yeah. Yes.
Rapid prototyping.
Yeah. So in you know, I think coming from emerging markets where resources are scarce, you kind of get things 50 to 60% ready and you're really out there. But, you know, and so in India, the whole innovation concept with jugaad, and there's a big book on it, which I'd let you read at leisure, is an interesting one. But I'm going to pass this on to Natasha to help me check in any questions from the Q&A. And
just a quick one on the sprint point you're making, like sprints, rapid prototyping. I mean,
right.
I'm going to share a link here. Let's see, can we link to attendees? Yeah. So I'm part of, do you guys know the Fab Lab network? This is a professor at MIT named Neil Gershenfeld, working with Sherry Lassiter and others. It's an idea of a makerspace or a Fab Lab. Actually, can you hear the helicopter? Did you guys hear that or not? This is going from the White House and other regions up. I live in DC, up towards National Institute of Health. That we hear them. So thank you for everybody working on the challenges today. But I'm sharing the Fab Lab network. It's a map of all the Fab Labs. These are maker spaces, or like think of a library, but it's like shop tools and sewing machines and cutters and things. And when you come in, it's not, please make this thing we're going to tell you to do, but what would you like to make? And it's a welcoming, open, free space. They have to raise money for the materials and get it built. But that particular community has been doing rapid prototyping around COVID solutions. And on Tuesday mornings, they run open web review. And if you have made a new face shield or new mask or a new this or a solution or ways to make more recyclable PPE so that we're not throwing everything in the waste dumps, and whatever you've come up with, new ways for you know, that this group is meeting and helping each other. So thinking about rapid prototyping in general on all topics, but also doing it in community using internet is a cool idea. So there's an example there in the GitLab.
Absolutely. And somebody's rightly written frugal innovation is what is jugaad. So Natasha, anything from you?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's truly been inspiring. I know we're out of time. So Ms. Smith, is it okay if we go by 5 to 7 minutes?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, great. So we have this one question which we would love for you to answer. So it's from Pushpa Rama. And the question is, it is heartening to learn about how you have galvanized a movement to bring about inclusivity and social justice into the tech world. What inspired you to move from the tech world of Google to the impactful work that you're doing presently? We'd love to hear you.
Okay, sure. I think there's a couple of factors for me, and I think many on this call, you might think for yourself, like, what is it? You know, often when I'm doing interviews, I ask people not only, you know, about their skills and about their background, but when they were in high school, what did they care about? Because as you go to our college, like as you go to high school, college, these are the first steps as a young person when you're really starting to think, what do I care about? Versus, you know, as a younger person, you're mentored by your family much more and they're helping guide you. And I always think, what were the clubs that you joined, or the sports team, or your favorite class, or your teacher, or the project you did, something inside of school, something outside of school? What was it? You know, sometimes someone might say, I liked to be in the model UN or the student government. And it might not be that they want to be in government. It might be that they like certain kinds of system solutions or something, or they liked robotics, but maybe they liked actually mathematics or whatever that is. I think it's really important. And this may sound like, is she answering that question? I am. I'm going to get to the specific, but my point for each person is to really pay attention to what you love. And that's going to change. You may not know what it is, but just like, you know, most of this generation right now, by the way, will live 100 years. So you're going to do a lot of different things with so many different people in so many different places. And you have no idea. The most important is to kind of get the values right. And get the listening skills and the speaking skills. If you speak more, do that and learn listening. If you listen more, find your voice. Ask other people for help if you're struggling on that. So when I was a child, it was the 70s and the 80s, and we had just, the moonshot had come, and we got this idea of the environment. Like if you went into 100 years ago and you asked somebody, what do you think about the environment? They would look at you like, do you mean this room, or what are you talking about? But we as humanity understand that we live on a living planet. And so we were Bethlehem, I'm from Buffalo, so Bethlehem Steel and all this like industrial age, you know, the Great Lakes were dying. The fish were dying. We had mercury, all this terrible stuff. And so we worked together, the adults around us were pushing back on the system to fix the environment. My mother organized on the first Earth Day, she organized a race. The race was bicycle, car commuter, bus commuter, and walker from the edge of Buffalo to downtown. The bicycle won. So let's go with the bamboo bikes. In fact, one of my dreams is that every child at school would make their own bike as part of their experience. And maybe the seniors, maybe the high schoolers could make the ones for the little ones. So everyone would have a bike. Susan B. Anthony, the great quality leader, said that the bicycle is the greatest thing she ever saw for emancipation and freedom for people. That's very interesting. So I had this environmental, we also had civil rights work. There was a lawsuit in Buffalo to integrate the races of our schools. I was lucky to go to a high school, a public high school that had no money like public schools, but had the most amazing teachers who were so entrepreneurial. And I said in the beginning, they made us do science and technology and arts in all the subjects. They didn't separate them, and they didn't dismiss ideas. One of my favorite things the teachers did to us one day was they created, do you guys know the book 1984 about this terrible future that we might live in? They created 1984 Day on the kids. Imagine at high school you go in and people are acting crazy like 1984. And they just did it until the kids revolted. They did it to the kids to teach the kids to push back. And it took until after lunch for the high school kids to work together to say, this is not right. And they did it, and they learned. So that's active democracy learning, right? So I think for me, it was these early roots of getting to do, like you're doing in the university, active STEM, active civil society, active things. I draw from that. And so then when I get in places where people are telling me, oh, no, that's not important. You know, the bullying part on Facebook or the fake news, those are such hard problems. These are the hardest problems of humanity, the internet bias, right? How hard is this? And I don't know how we're going to solve it, but some of the people on this call might be part of that. I hope you will if you're interested in that. I was lucky to take acoustics from Professor Bose, like the amazing acoustics teacher who invented so much of our sound technologies. And he always said, you know, find your passion, wander around finding that, because if you work on things you love, you're going to be much more effective. And so I use that advice for myself, and I hope for others to find that. And respect other people, you know, that's what this is all about. And maybe those with the least voice, if you can use part of your career for that. President Obama luckily welcomed us from Silicon Valley to come in the government. Who thought, like when we came, we were like, I wonder if we could get everybody to do things like this, have a service tour. Like the lawyers, they go in and out of government. We have a surgeon general, they go in, scientists, all these people. And of course, in government already, all governments in the world, there's wonderful technical people. You know, here in the US, NASA or Department of Energy, NIH, others, as well as the IT technical folks, the military folks. But it's not a thing that you have everywhere with every secretary, a CTO. But why not? So thinking about integrating the subjects for civic, nonprofit, philanthropy, so that the fourth revolution is a fourth, not industrial revolution, but the fourth revolution is an inclusive industrial, civic, nonprofit, philanthropy, community, benefit-based inclusive revolution. And that's what you can do if you really realize that you have 7 billion colleagues and you have all the tools of the universe, and whoever likes the different tools, and put them on your team. And especially on our planet, the women of color are in the worst position because of discrimination, because women have been discriminated against, people of color have been discriminated against in almost all countries except certain countries. That group especially needs to be lifted and have more leadership, which Malala teaches us every day. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think that was just the perfect ending which you could have given to this amazing and inspiring talk. I'll pass it on to Anu now.
Thank you, Natasha. And I think, Megan, it's, listening to you and your humility just gives me the sense of how you've humanized technology. When one thinks of tech, you think of these geeky screens and, hard world. But you really, really brought about that human touch and the human element. And funnily enough, somebody once told me that technology is too important to be just left to men. And I think you kind of brought that aloud in a really beautiful way for me. And I think, as you rightly said, inclusion, innovation, industrialization, I think it will be the beauty of a time, or a real test of a time, about how this all comes together, and that'll be a legacy to the next generation. So Thank you so much. Thank you so much on behalf of everybody. I think this has been fabulous. I mean, I think we have to apologize to the audience because we have not been able to answer all the questions. We could be sitting here for 2 hours, the way you've kind of briefed us. But it's been a real pleasure and my privilege to be moderating this.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Be safe, and just let's go. We got lots of things to do to solve, and as I mentioned in the beginning, these are such complex times. We really need all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Smith. I think Anu summarized it really well. Thank you so much, Anu, for doing this for us. I mean, it was a pleasure listening to you. Thank you all for participating. We're really sorry we couldn't take all the questions today, but we really appreciate you engaging with us. Stay tuned to the upcoming Plaksha Tech Talks. We've done about, this is our 4th one, and we are ready for the next one on June 13th. So we really look forward to having you there. Stay safe and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.